Right now, it's time to be joined by our friend Brian Ross and Real News. Brian joins us on a Thursday morning, and we take a look at news stories. And especially, I think Brian is super busy this time because, once again, we have a trial going on, and we have Brian. It's hard to explain how in American history we've come to this point where we've got one trial going on for a police possibly getting a murder charge, and we've got another case right on its heels, only miles away. I mean, this is just unbelievable.
Would you not think that the police, especially in the Twin Cities area, would be on their very, very best behavior? And this case with a woman, a 48-year-old officer, who's a 26-year veteran of the force of Brooklyn Center, says she pulled out her weapon instead of her taser and fired a shot into a 19-year-old man who was pulled over for a traffic stop. It's hard to understand, hard to explain to that family, to that community, to people of color in Minneapolis who've seen this all too often, that it was an accident. That's what she says. And it sort of sounds like it must have been, but how could that have been?
You know, I'm willing to give the doubt simply because I've never been in this situation. I don't care how many years I've been a police officer. I've never been in a situation where I've had to either draw a gun or a taser. Have other officers around, so I tried, and I really deep inside try to give her the benefit of the doubt here. But she's resigned, and she's now going to be charged. And this is a big change in the blue line, as they call it. Police officers protect police officers. And it's kind of it's a real nice thing when you first think about it, but when it extends to covering bad police actions, it's finally looks like maybe, and especially in this area, maybe that blue line about improper behavior by police officers is about to be erased.
Well, there would have been a time when no charges would have been brought against an officer in this case. It would have been written off as an accident and perhaps internal punishment, leave the force. But here, prosecutors quickly moved. Manslaughter means that she could face up to 10 years, although in Minnesota, a first offender in a case like this would probably be about 4 years. And I don't think these charges would have been brought otherwise, but given the background of what's happened there again and again and again, and I've seen all these various cases, many of which did lead to death, but with rough treatment for people of color who are stopped for the most minor things, from jaywalking to speeding to expired license plates to having an air freshener hanging from your rearview mirror.
You know, here's the thing that got me, and that is actually the video footage from her camera. The person that she was going to tase was inside his car, turned away from her. And he had no place to go, So you know, it's one of those things. I'm very interested in to see how this court case will proceed, because basically it's on the heels of what's going on with the other case where yesterday in court. I watched a few minutes of the coverage. I did, and I just can't. I can't go with the description of the defense. That I just can't. I can't. It's hard to sit there and watch this.
Well, everyone has a chance of defense, but they've spent 2 days now, and Derek Chauvin's defense is that it really wasn't that knee to the neck restraint for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. That's not what killed him. It was his enlarged heart. He had a problem with drugs. I don't know if the jury's going to buy it, and. Of course, you only need one person to force a mistrial, but I would be surprised if by a week from today there was not a verdict already.
All right, now we're going to switch over to Joe Biden. Sleepy Joe, as he was called by the former guy, is right in the middle of doing something that's very interesting, and it is the announcement yesterday, which I think he did with class and style and very presidential of us. He's going to end our commitment in Afghanistan after 20 years and 4 presidents, and explaining that we have special forces that are positioned all around the world that can deal with terrorist acts. I think that is a major thing that Donald Trump promised, and Joe Biden is going to be the president that actually does it. But then you have Joe Biden reacting with Russia, proposing a meeting and with Putin, and also set to expel a whole bunch of Russian diplomats. And then you, of course, have Joe Biden having to deal with China. And right now, whether you agree with his policies or not, he seems to be doing a great job on it.
He is being presidential, and he's got a firm opinion about Afghanistan. If you read the background, during the Obama years, he was in favor of this back then. He was pushing then to end the commitment to Afghanistan. It may not end well at all. You have to acknowledge it's going to be ugly there in the end. But otherwise, from his point of view, and I think his belief was there was no other way out. Otherwise, we could keep going forever like that. And he said, that's it. That's a halt. I would suspect the Taliban will take over many of the major cities there, and it's going to be a mess, frankly.
No doubt.
He'll get blamed for it.
Yeah.
He'll get blamed for it.
No, he'll get blamed for it, but you know what? It's just Afghanistan is not a. You just can't rule it. The Afghan people cannot. They've never been able to control it. It's always been controlled by warlords and by different factions. And we can't stay in there forever. I mean, and every 20 years lose 2,000 to 4,000 American citizens, where there really is no answer in Afghanistan. There is no answer other than, self-rule, help out if they need help, but where we can go in and help out with raids to help them and protect them. But it's a decision that had to be made, and it's made, and we'll see what happens. You're right; it's going to be horrible. But then something other that happened yesterday. I don't know if you heard Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell was talking about how terrible of a move this is, how it affects women's rights, and I just about drove off the road. And saying, Mitch McConnell talking about women's rights when they want to strip the rights of women in this country. It was just one of those absurd political moments that literally I had to pull over and stop and shake my head and say, did he just say that?
Suddenly he's a champion for women's rights. He's a champion to keep the budget deficit down after years, of course, of ignoring those issues. Well, it just tells you it's all situational, and it does not come out of any DPL beliefs, just comes out of a way to oppose the opposition. I guess that's how he sees his job. This is like, we'll make the case. And I think that, unfortunately, I would see the Republican Party as again and again and again and again, they are just the againers. They're against anything, and they don't really have a philosophy or a policy or a way forward for the country. They're just going to block things.
Now, with your experience in covering crime, in covering courts, right now, this moment that we are living through in America, where the FBI is investigating and have charged about 400 people in the raid on the Capitol, and we see these two trials going on right now. This is a tipping point that could become very violent heading into the summertime.
Well, depending on the outcome of the trial, the judge there has announced if there's a verdict late at night, he will hold it till the next morning. There's concern about a reaction. If the jury finds Derek Chauvin guilty of only the least serious charge out of manslaughter, that will be seen as a victory for Derek Chauvin and a defeat for the prosecution. So that's a tense time. There are so many trials coming of police officers accused of violence and making arrests and having citizens, who die at the hands of police for what appear to be minor infractions. These are tense times. Plus, as you mentioned, there's certainly going to be a large superseding indictment of the people who ran and organized the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th. Count on that. More is coming for sure.
You just look at around here, and we've got our hands full right here in the good old United States of America. And possibly another reason that goes along with pulling out of Afghanistan, which isn't going to happen until September 11th. And I think that is a great date that he picked.
That's very, very, very symbolic, very important. That puts at least an understandable. We gave it 20 years, and 20 years. That's about as much as you could do. and $2 trillion plus. I mean, that money could be spent elsewhere, I think, certainly.
And to go honor the veterans like he did after the announcement. Once again, like I said, the presidential seal has been restored in that way.
I think so. And it'll be tough for many, many people. Those who lost loved ones fighting in Afghanistan will see this as not a victory, and it's never going to be a victory. And it's hard to acknowledge that, but that's how we judge wars all too often. And this was one that is not going to end in the victory. We should learn our lesson. We cannot go in and rebuild a country like we did in Western Europe or in Japan after World War II. Those days don't exist anymore.
Well, it's going to be continuing to be an extremely busy time for you, Brian, over the next couple of
Oh, my
weeks.
gosh, there's no shortage of news. And what a pleasure that we haven't mentioned the former president, and we don't have to. He is fading into his crazed obscurity.
We have another commentator, Don Morrison, and Don Morrison just did a commentary exactly on that called "The Sounds of Silence." How great it is.
Well, it doesn't seem to be missed, and let's give him credit for he had raised the issue of getting America out of Afghanistan, which in a way makes it easier for Joe Biden, I think, that he's following through. He should acknowledge that. And let's not forget that it was under the last president that the Operation Warp Speed began, which raced through and got the vaccines that are now being given to so many Americans, despite some resistance in certain pockets. Those are all plus things, and I think it'd be best for Biden to acknowledge that it wasn't 100% negative from Donald Trump.
All right, Brian, we'll speak to you next week.
Okay, Marshall, good talking with you.
Take care. Brian Ross, Real News here on Robin Hood Radio. You can find the podcast version at robinhoodradio.com. Click on demand, and then click on the link for Brian Ross and Real News.